Hello, my friends. Here we are again. It's another week. It's another day. It's another episode. Welcome to the Wise Idea Podcast with Christopher J. Harris. I am your host, Christopher J. Harris, and I am so excited. Man, listen, this has been an amazing journey. And if you've been following me, you know that I have been kind of giving you guys little clues on the back scene or the behind the scenes of this podcasting journey of mine. I jumped into the deep end of the pool without totally knowing what I was getting into. And I've been stretched and I've been growing and I've been learning along the way. And I just got to be honest with you. I got to tell you that if I had waited for everything to be perfect and to be lined up, I don't know that the podcast would be out yet. But I'm so glad that I'm learning and growing, and for an incredible team of people and even strangers that I'm meeting that are podcasters who are helping me navigate this journey. And so thank you so much for who you are, everybody that's out there that's helping. I'm extremely honored that you took the time to hang out with us today. And for those of you that hang out with us each week, thank you. You know by now, if you listen to at least one of our episodes, that we are focused and on mission to provide strategies for hearts to be inspired and for heads to be wise. Our goal is to inspire everyday people to live wise lives. And so, you know, I'm personally passionate about life and leadership and family and marriage and ministry. That is the church. So that's the focus of this podcast. I believe that wise ideas positively change the course of lives. Make no mistake about it, and we say it all the time, when wisdom becomes a part of your life, your entire life gets better in every area. And so if you're new to us, we release a brand new podcast weekly on Thursday mornings. A lot of you may listen to this podcast and this platform with friends and in groups, and I'd love to hear about those groups and listening parties that are happening around the world. Please send us a message at info at thewise-idea-podcast.com. Well, listen, I got a couple other things that I normally say right here, but I'll put that on the back end because I'm excited for my guest today that is on with me. And this entire month, we are focused on moms. We're focused on mothers. I'm going to give a quick shout out to my mom, my mother, Margaret H. Harris, and my mother-in-law just passed away a few months ago, maybe about 5 or 6 months ago now. And so we celebrate her memory and her legacy and all that she was and all that she contributed to our family and our life before she left this earth. So anyways, we're focused on moms. It's going to be fun. Guess what, y'all? I even have a comedian this month that's going to come in and talk about some funny stuff with moms. So you got to tune in. But with all of that said, guys, let me welcome to the Wise Idea Podcast, Miss Heather MacFadyen. We're going to talk about that in a moment from the God-Centered Mom platform. What's up?
Hello, Christopher. Thanks for having me on.
Well, listen, this has been a long time coming. I'm so glad to have you on.
Well, I think this is a great thing you have here. I'm all about wisdom on our show and having wise moms that have gone before me and just recognizing the vast amount of information out there in the interwebs, but the lack of wisdom. So I think this is a great idea that you have in this podcast.
Well, thanks so much. I'm honored that you would even make the time and be open to hanging out with me for a little bit and inspiring some people and dropping some nuggets and even sharing transparently about your story and all of that. So let's jump in. You ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Well, first of all, we got to laugh a little bit. And so when I introduced you, people may think like, man, he's interviewing somebody. He doesn't even know what their last name is. So you got to tell us that story really fast.
It's all good. And y'all give Christopher a break because my husband and I don't even pronounce our last name the same. So it is a Scottish last name. And technically in Scotland, they would take the D and the Y together and do a gin sound. And so it would be MacFadyen. My husband's had it so long, he doesn't even do the Mac. It's MacFadyen. And I like the Y, so I say MacFadyen. And so even our pastor comes up to us. We've been at that church over 15 years, and he's saying, now, how do we say your last name again? Everyone's trying to decide. So It's all
That
good. I'll answer to whatever.
that's hilarious. I love that. I love that. And that becomes an immediate talking point when you connect with other couples, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. I mean, my husband and I are both extroverts, and we like to win others over. So we have no trouble starting conversations.
Wow. Well, you and your husband are both extroverts. We got to talk about that even in terms of being a mom and what that looks like. My wife
Yeah.
and I are a little bit different. I think people would probably be surprised, and I'll kind of spill the beans a little bit and say that actually my wife talks much more than I do. I'm actually somewhat much more introverted. Actually, in terms of testing Myers Briggs and all of that, I'm actually what they would call an ambivert.
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, so that probably surprises most people when they see me talking a lot and on stage and all that stuff. But
But there's
that's
a
another
difference.
episode.
There's a difference I've heard between being on stage and even I'm more of an ambivert. I guess the ENFP that I am is the most introverted of the extroverts. I think when we're talking like this, and not a lot is demanded of us,
Hmm.
we're going to talk and we're going to get off.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And it's more where I get my energy from. And
yeah.
so I love being on a stage where not a lot is demanded of me as far as relationally, but I can inform and equip and teach. I love doing that, but it gets exhausting to engage in multiple conversations about the weather. I want to go deep. I want to have real conversations, and so that's where I think that introvert, extrovert comes into play for me, for sure.
Wow. Well, let's talk a little bit about
Okay.
GodCenteredMom, the
All right. Let's
space.
do it.
Yeah, the space where you can admit that you're not perfect.
Mhm.
God-centered moms, but in process ones, right? So let's talk
Yeah.
about that. How did we arrive, or how did we launch the GodCenteredMom.com platform?
It started as a blog eons ago. Everybody I knew, other moms. So my oldest is almost 13. So that dates me to pre Facebook. We would update each other on what we did that day and update my parents and my husband's parents on how the kids were doing, funny things they said by having blogs. Everybody had a family blog, and you had a blog roll with all your friends listed on the sidebar. And that was our version of Facebook and Instagram. And then for myself, once I got to my third son, I was drowning in kids. I would just sleep in as late as I could until the second my husband was going to go out the door. He would do the morning early riser routine and feed them breakfast and get them going. And then right before he left for work, he would wake me up. So I would come downstairs to kids all revved up with energy, ready for second breakfast or whatever other needs they had. And then I would be responding to needs all day until bedtime, and very reactionary and miserable. And so this was not the idea I had in my head when I started having kids. I loved kids when I was younger. I babysat. I had a master's degree in speech language pathology, specializing in 0 to 3 development. So I like being a mom was my main goal in life, and career choices surrounded just my love of kids. And here I was with 3 kids and miserable. And so a friend of mine pointed me to a gal, Kat Lee. She has hellomornings.org, and she had a little Maximize Your Mornings ebook back then. And at the time, I thought, this is ridiculous. I'm exhausted. The last thing I need to do is wake up a little bit earlier and spend time with God. That is literally the last thing I need to do. I need more sleep. How can I get more sleep? And so I thought, well, okay. In her book, she says, just try 5 minutes. I thought, well, 5 minutes I can do. And then she also started these accountability groups, and she was actually my accountability captain at the time. And so I started doing it, and I was having success. And I was a month into waking up early and spending time with God before I woke up to my kids, and greeted them. And I got the flu, and I thought, well, there it is. I tried to start a habit and I failed. So guess that's done. And fortunately, Kat, who's still my very, very good friend, she messaged me through Twitter back then and said, hey, I noticed you haven't been checking in. Is everything okay? And I said, well, the excuse, I got the flu and then just lost the habit. And she said, well, Monday's coming around. That's a new start. Let's give it another go. And from that point, that was 8 years ago, I've been keeping this regular habit of waking up early, spending time with God, making sure that if I don't get it first thing, that once the kids go off to school or I have a quiet moment in the day, I can make it a priority to be in God's word and prayer and worship. And so what I saw then was I was speaking at a MOPS group. This is where God-Centered Mom came from. I actually, like, let me take a step back. So that blog, I started writing things down that I was learning in that quiet time. And it started transitioning from being about my kids and funny things they did to inspiration God was giving me and how it applied to motherhood and books I was reading. And then it was the last royal wedding that day. I was asked to speak at my MOPS group to give it was the last meeting of the year, and I was moving on and out of MOPS, and they wanted us to talk about our motherhood journey. And I had woken up early to watch the royal wedding with my mentor and was exhausted and up front and actually told the leader of the MOPS group, I don't think I need to share because everyone's already said everything. And, I don't really have anything important to say. So I almost didn't get up in front of the group. But she said, that's ridiculous. Everybody's story is unique. Get up there. And while I'm standing in front of the group, God downloads this idea. I'm sharing about how my motherhood journey started with being really child-centered. And then it moved to being really self-centered and how I was just trying to survive. And then how God really revealed my pride in motherhood, how I was making it all about me or my kids and my plans and my desires, and that perhaps I needed to put him back into the center of it and have him guide my interactions with my kids, my desires, my day. And so I was standing up there and said the words God-Centered Mom. And I thought, oh, there it is. That's the new thing. And so I started a site that next month and blogged there for 3 to 4 years.
Wow. So it sounds like obviously you really, sounds like you kind of stumbled into it as technology sort of involved and you were able to embrace that.
I'm not a strategic person, Christopher. Let's just say anyone out there like, oh, I wonder what Heather's battle strategy was. None. My battle strategy or plan or strategic action is follow God, obey him, because I'm not a planner. Let's say that.
That's incredible. So let's talk a little bit about what you have gleaned, over the last 5 years, as the podcast has been going and as you've evolved into this God-Centered Mom platform. What have been some major themes and major ideas? I mean, you dropped a bunch of nuggets right there and just kind of telling the story. Maybe let's do this. Let's start off talking a little bit about what you said when you talked about those that you saw your personal pride in mothering, mm-hmm. and then transitioned into self and then into this God-Centered Mom thing. So let's talk a little bit about that a little bit.
Yeah. My boys attend a class. Some of my boys right now, I'm homeschooling one, but they attend a classical Christian school. And the headmaster at the time had us in his office, and he was giving us different resources before we started into the school. And it was all these parents. It wasn't just my husband and I, but he was sharing just his wisdom and what he'd learned. And he gave us this little book that he said was for the husbands, and it was on pride. And I thought, well, yeah, make sure that my husband reads this. And then I realized I was reading through it and all the symptoms of pride. And I thought, oh, my stars, it's like glaring conviction on my heart that I've done all these Bible studies over the years on different symptoms of my pride, but I'd never really gotten to the root of it. And so recognizing a lot of my struggles with my boys and with my contentment was really just a desire to make it all about me and not about God. So that's where this started. And I actually had signed with an agent to write a book about God-Centered Mom. My youngest had just been born. Apparently the agent didn't notice in my headshot at the time that I was pregnant. So he thought, oh, well, that's not a good idea to have a newborn and a new book. I thought, oh, no, I can do it. Again, pride creeping up. I can do it. How hard could writing a book be?
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I've since learned and watched Friends and have interviewed lots of authors, and it is not a small undertaking to write a book. But I gave it a go that first summer that my youngest was a newborn, and had a sitter come for 1 day a week, and I'd go over to Panera and write as best as I could and come back and write in the wee hours of the day and sent it off to my agent. And he asked me a question I didn't know how to respond to. He said, so how long did you work on this? And I felt trapped. If I said a long time and it was terrible, that was embarrassing. If I said, well, I didn't really put much time into it, that doesn't really value his time. And I thought, oh no, what do I say? I said, well, I worked on it. I put some time into it. But he basically said we needed to try again. And so I felt defeated. I didn't realize that this was another art form, writing. I thought, no, you just get it right and that's it. And I didn't think about all the rough drafts people turn in and how much effort goes into it. And so I shut my computer for a while, and my agent reached out again and he said, all right, let's give it another go. And I thought, oh, all right. So I try again. And again, he says, nope, not quite there yet. I said, well, then do you want to just not do this? Because you came up with the idea. I didn't want to write a book in the first place. And he said, no, how about you read these books on writing and then we'll come back to it. And that was a hard season in our family. My husband was working so much. He basically got about 2 or 3 hours of sleep a night, was working a lot. He was present for our boys, but it was a very rough season. And so I just set the whole thing aside for months, but then picked it up and put it down. And around October, almost 5 years ago, I guess it was 2013, I was told my agent I was ready. I worked with friends who were writers, editors, even my high school English teacher. I gave her a copy. I sent it to him. He told me we'd meet with publishers at this conference. I show up, and all of my friends that were also meeting with publishers had actual meeting times, and I only had a meeting time with my agent. And I thought, something's off here. And I told people, pray for me. I need to have wisdom to know if I should sign or not sign. Anyway, I show up and he says, I don't think there's a lot of market for a mom book right now. And I was devastated. I thought, here, I'd made all this space in my life. I'd said no to helping run a conference that I was a part of. I'd said no to other things and commitments to write this book and finally be all in and obedient to God who'd brought this opportunity. And I'm looking at a pile of dry bones. Oh no, wow. What do I do with this? And God said, I'll breathe life into it when it's time. And you just need to walk away from this. Well, then my friend Kat Lee, actually, again, she had a podcast at the time that I listened to. And another friend of mine, Katie Orr, she had a little podcast. And we were in a mastermind group, which was just a bunch of ladies who blogged at the time, Christian women that just wanted to support each other. And I said, y'all, would you help me start a podcast? And so they gave me the tools and equipped me. And I started with just interviewing my mentor and interviewing my dad and my husband and just whoever would interview with me. And then because I'd had that agent, I'd met some authors that had New York Times bestselling books and other things. And so I was able to invite them on the show because I had connections. And that was almost 5 years ago.
Well, I tell you, you're on the fast track, because if you look at your podcast now, I mean, you're interviewing folks like Elisa Bevere and so many others, and that's not an easy feat. I can tell you as a podcaster, securing some of those big names is not an easy deal. Well,
I think it's only God, and it obviously took some humbling and a redirection from what I thought the path I was on was going to be, and just recognizing sometimes if we cling too hard to one thing, we miss the actual thing he's doing with our kids, with our spouses, with our careers. And that's the humbling. That's the recognizing that I set down my plans and my agendas and pick up his and follow him one step at a time.
All right, guys, we'll be right back. I know you are right in the middle of an incredible conversation, and you were gleaning things from this incredible conversation that we're having currently. We'll get right back to it. I was enjoying myself as well, but I wanted to interject really quickly and just invite you, if you are listening to this podcast, that probably means that you are also on social media. Well, listen, I'm on social media. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter. As a matter of fact, y'all, guess what? I'm also on Pinterest. I would love to have you as a part of my tribe, my following, my connection, my social media family. And so if you're on any of those platforms, I'm at CJ Harris O-N-E, CJ Harris, O-N-E. Would love to connect with you. So while this commercial is even going on, before we get back into the conversation, why don't you go online right now, pull your devices out, pull your computer out, and hit the follow button, hit the friend request button, hit the engage button, and we'd be so glad to have you as a part of our social media following and family. Not only that, as you listen to this podcast, you may be hearing things that are insightful for you, things that are being shared where the light bulb goes off. I would love to hear about those moments. As a matter of fact, you may be listening and there may be questions that you have or things you'd like to share with us that you're hearing. And either way, we'd love to hear from you. So please send us an email. The email address is info, I-N-F-O, at ChristopherJHarris.com. Again, that's info at ChristopherJHarris.com. Not only that, but lastly, if you have a project or a book or a platform that you'd like to promote or advertise with us, you're thinking that this would be a great audience for you to reach and connect with, we'd love to start a conversation with you about that. So please send us an email, again, at info at ChristopherJHarris.com. And in turn, we'll send you an information sheet and be glad to start that incredible conversation of partnership with you. With that said, guys, let's get right back into this amazing conversation that we're having. Be sure to pull your notes back out. It's going to be fun. Let's go. Yeah, it's interesting to hear your journey, though, even in terms of the book. So I can tell you as a person so basically, I tell people it took me 9 years to think about my book and about 6 weeks to write it.
All right.
And the truth is, I think that often, which I think ties this right back to motherhood, people see the finished product or they see the external, but they have no idea of the stress and strain, the pressure, or the backstory behind various things that have taken place. Yeah. And I think that even in terms of mothering, so my wife and I, we have 4. By the way, how many children do you have, Heather?
I have 4 boys.
4 boys.
This is right. Mm-hmm. Wow. Humbling again. There you go.
Well, yeah, I could imagine. So what are the ages of your boys?
6, 8, 10, 12.
6, 8, 10. So literally every 2 years.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I like to say just like I planned, but that would be a lie.
Well, I was just about to ask. So was that planned? Or?
No, again, not planned like that, and not planned to have 4 boys. Just happened. My husband has 3 sisters. His dad has 4 sisters. His grandfather is an only child, and so my husband likes to joke that I'm the matriarch. That the family tree of MacFadyens is straight until it gets to us, and then it just goes crazy.
That's funny.
Hopefully, cross your fingers.
Well, listen. So we have 4 in our home as well, and as you alluded to, most of it was not planned. I mean, we've got a 15-year-old, a 11-year-old, a 10-year-old, and now we've got a 14-week-old. So life is fun.
That's good. That's good. I was that in my family. It was 2, and then 11 years later, it was me and my younger brother. So we had 2 sets.
There you go.
So your 14-week-old is actually the age of a 15-year-old. They say you're as old as your oldest child. Your family is. So you're exposed to 15-year-old things, and he's going to be wise beyond his years.
Yeah,
I think she will be.
Yeah.
She'll have someone looking out for her too.
Yeah, and her oldest sister, because the oldest is a girl, the 2 middle children are boys, and then the youngest one is a girl. So my oldest daughter is like in total like fan mode. She's like, oh, this is gonna be my best friend. So she picks out clothes for her and all that kind of jazz. So
yeah, my sister's 16 years older than me. So yeah.
Oh wow.
She was like another mom. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you mentioned this book about pride that your pastor, or the schoolmaster, gave your husband. What was the title of that book?
I'm going to have to find it because now all of a sudden I can't think of it. Okay. Now that you asked me.
Well,
now that the deer in the headlights, I'll get you the link.
Yeah, and we'll put it in the show notes for everybody.
Okay.
Well, you've mentioned about 5 or 6 things that we're definitely gonna have to put in the show notes. So the mastermind group, MOPS, HelloMornings.org, all of that. So we'll throw all of that in there. So what are some of those themes that you're finding as you have moms reach out to you in your
Mm-hmm.
own journey? What are themes and ideas that you keep hearing resonate with moms today?
Well, a lot of the moms that are drawn to the title God-centered mom think that I'm going to give them a prescription or a method to be perfect. Oh, I want to be that. I want to be the God-centered mom. And they tend to be type A and beat themselves up. And so if they listen to the show, they'll hear me say, nope, we do our best and our responsibilities, and we leave the results up to God. And it's that handing over our kids that ultimately they are his first. And that idea is really hard for those of us that like to be in control and have an outcome and feel achieve and get things done. So I think for a lot of moms, it's that struggle of surrender and knowing what part is my part. I know I'm not ultimately maybe responsible for my child's salvation or for if my child has a job, but then at the same time, the culture tells us when a child makes a mistake, let's say a shooting or another situation, we as a culture say, well, tell me about their parents. Who do we have to blame? And it goes all the way back to the gospel where there's the child who's blind. Well, did he sin or his parents? I mean, we're looking for blame. And yet the Bible tells us that we are responsible individually that God knows who is saved, and he is the one guiding and drawing near. And that as parents, we present truth, we present love, we present the gospel, we pray over our kids, scripture, and then we say, all right, God, what are you going to do? And that's a hard process. I mean, I am struggling through it daily with my boys I want to micromanage every word that comes out of their mouth, every interaction, when they hit each other. I have said 1,000 times, how God asks us to interact with each other. And it is so hard to, instead of coming down on them, like, you better get it right, to say, I get why you're struggling. We all sin. We all need Jesus. And to come alongside them with the gospel is really, really challenging. Yet that is what my goal is in pointing moms, and where I see the struggle is how do we do this day in, day out?
That's so powerful. I think what I hear, one of the things that I hear you saying, and I don't mind if you course correct this or redirect this in some way, but part of what I think I hear you saying a little bit is this notion of really giving up what we feel like is control, right?
Yeah.
And so it's sort of like this idea that, when your child is an infant, anyone that is a parent that has had infant children in their home, that there's only so much control you have. I mean, if that child decides that they're not going to want to go to sleep, and as sleepy as you may be, well, guess what? You guys are getting ready to have an all-night slumber party, or if you could have it all planned out. We're going to get out of the house by this time. The child's going to be dressed and fed and all of that, and all of that gets turned upside down in 5 minutes. So yeah. I think maybe God has so orchestrated it that in that lesson from the infants, that we should model that at different seasons and different stages as our children get older. What do you think? What was that? What do you hear there?
Yeah, I think that it definitely is a control thing. I think some of our kids are more compliant in younger years and some are not. And I think the ones that are compliant in younger years, we get the misinformation that we have more control than we do, because we can say sit down and they will, but they may be standing up on the inside. And so then they get into pre-adolescence, adolescence, and teenage years, and the rebelling, and we're thinking, where did this come from? Well, it's been there the whole time. But you had this idea that you say something, they do it and they obey, but they're not really obeying. Girls will do this. I think sometimes, not all girls, we got our strong-willed girls out there, but sometimes they'll be compliant and quiet on the outside, and we think, then we're surprised when they're rebellious in later years. And just recognizing that sin nature of wanting our way over God's way is present in all of us. And so when a 2-year-old bites for the first time and we're in shock, I mean, how did this happen? And it's so personal. I remember when my boys were little and they would hit someone, or, we almost had one kicked out of preschool for biting. And I'm shocked, right? But I shouldn't be, because he's just responding from that same place that's in me, that sin that wants my way, no matter what way I use to get my way. And that's the core issue that from Adam we're all born with. And so not being shocked, loving them in spite of, and then also remembering that until our kids profess faith, we are loving unbelievers in our home, that this is a mission field in our home, that this is a ministry in our home. And so keeping that mindset that these aren't trophies to be presented at the end as if we're the best parents because our kids are on the best soccer team, but to make wise choices in what we say yes to in our schedules and in our lives, so that there's time to disciple and to minister and to have conversations about why something was hard and how Jesus informs us on how to respond. We can't have those conversations if we're rushing here and there and everywhere.
Okay, so Heather, right then, what you just said, that right there, like if I was at a church and you had said that in church, I'd have stood up and be like, preach, like, oh my gosh. Oh, like I was practicing good podcasting etiquette just then by not interrupting you. Right. But on the inside, I was like doing the running man.
You're very good at not interrupting. I am quite the interrupter, but you're doing an excellent job.
Well, thank you so much. I have to work at it. Trust me. But that's so profound and so such an epiphany and so true that until they accept the gospel, until they make the decision to see the gospel, we become the standard, the litmus test, the formula for whether or not they even have a desire to even want to accept the gospel. Oh, that's so good.
Mm-hmm. And we sometimes expect Holy Spirit fruit when they don't have the Holy Spirit.
Woo! Oh! Somebody pass the collection plate,
That's
y'all.
Right. We're taking it up right now. That is, I think, the perspective. And I think our parents, the parenting resources they were handed were get your kids to obey and be right with God. Have them perform so they're right with God. And you can't. That's not going to keep them in the church. That's not going to keep them desiring what Jesus really came to do. That is their performance. That is legalism. That's not at all what we see in the New Testament.
All right, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Such incredible wisdom, such incredible insight from my new family member, my new cousin, my new friend, God-Centered Mom's host, Miss Heather MacFadyen. You got to listen to the interview to know why I'm giving her two different last names. It's so great to connect with so many great people through this podcast and through this platform. I am so honored that Heather would take the time to be on. But guess what? This is just part one of the entire conversation. You got to come back for part two next week. Matter of fact, next week, here's a quick teaser for you. Man, Heather makes us cry next week. Like for real. Authentic, real tears. Tearjerker next week on part two of the interview. Well, it's May. It's Mother's Day right around the corner. So let me be one of the first to wish all of the moms, all of the mothers out there, happy Mother's Day. Your sacrifice is not unnoticed. Your love has no boundaries. Wow, moms, you are appreciated. Thank you so much for all that you do, all that you've done, all that you are doing, all that you will do. We so appreciate you. If you've been listening to this episode, Mom, I hope it's encouraged you in a real way. And I want to invite you, take this episode and share it with somebody else, another mom that needs to be encouraged and inspired and reinvigorated to know that as they walk this journey, they are not walking alone, that they don't have to be the perfect mom. They simply have to serve a perfect God and let Him bring perfection out of that. God does not expect perfection. He expects progress. So hopefully you've been encouraged today. And I hope you guys have an incredible Mother's Day. If you're listening to this and you're not a mom, be encouraged, be motivated, be inspired. And for all the fellas that's been listening in, I know that you've learned something today too. Listen, make sure you pause and call your mom. Send flowers if she likes flowers. Send a card if she likes a card. Whatever you got to do, don't forget Mother's Day. Well, listen, The Wise Idea, we're on social media. I want to invite you. Go to Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Check us out. Also, on iTunes and Google Play, I want to personally invite you, please go leave a rating and a review. Let other people know what's happening over here on the Wise Idea podcast. Some great stuff is being shared every single week. Well, I look forward to seeing you guys, connecting with you guys next week for part 2 of this conversation with my friend Heather. And in the meantime, guess what? Help us spread the word. You can also follow me on social media at CJ Harris, ONE, on multiple platforms, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and even Pinterest and LinkedIn. So in the meantime, I end every single conversation, every single episode, every single week with this simple phrase, this simple idea: live wisely. See you guys next week.